yet.
Even if he loses this first set 3-0, he will know it's just a total wipe and set 2 is all important. Of course, he will want to strike back. Firouzja is especially dangerous when he has white. He starts this game with the Italian opening, and it's the two knights defense. Look at this, the white knight going pawn hunting. White is going to win a pawn, the black knight pushed to the edge. This is such a trendy line. Firouzja found himself on the black side of this just yesterday in his semi-final against Arjun Erigaisi, and he's taking inspiration from that. Magnus, meanwhile, playing the second most popular move, a bishop block in that position, slowing Firouzja down. This shows Firouzja's aggressive intentions.
This decision by Alireza to go for this line, it's trendy and it's dangerous, right? That's exactly what he needs on the back foot right now. He has to maximize his chances every single game with white. I think that's a very smart decision that Magnus made. You know, with the bishop blocking that check, it's not the usual move. It's not the standard move. Magnus very quickly figured out that Alireza has some deep preparation. Had he gone for the main line, had he pushed that pawn to c6, he avoids that. So he sort of brings Alireza out of his main preparation.
That's going to be so important throughout this match as well, because no doubt both of these players, they know each other so well. They've probably got one or two surprises in their back pocket, but that doesn't mean they're playing all of them on game one, right? So the question is going to be, when do they choose to use those weapons?
This is a full pawn sacrifice, though, we should mention, from Magnus Carlsen, especially after this last turn. He's offering a trade, but it will be 7 pawns against... Oh, sorry, 7 pawns against 6, actually, after this trade. I'm expecting him to take. I'm not sure what Firouzja's thinking about here. Then the kings will castle. Magnus in return might just get centralized pieces, maybe even a bishop pair as some compensation. But here he's showing, maybe learning from that match against Hikaru yesterday, that he doesn't want to just knuckle down forced draws when he's ahead in a match. He wants to seize the moment.
He wants to seize the moment, but I think it's also credits to Firouzja right now. You know, he did not let it away, just looking completely unfazed. Alireza is at the moment after whatever happened in game one. He sort of just let go of that completely. So, and that is a sign of a champion, you know? To come back from a one-move blunder at the biggest stage and go like, there's a whole fight on, the whole day in front of me, and you know, I'm going to make my chances. And that's the opening approach he has. He comes back with the knight, attacks the bishop, a trade at the center. If you pick up the white bishop, that would be a bad idea. Knight takes bishop would come in with a check.
Exactly right. So creating some counter chances there is Firouzja, keeping the position relatively complicated and forcing Magnus Carlsen to keep thinking. Although it is Firouzja that goes down on the clock here. He wants to try and wrangle his way into some sort of advantage. This isn't going to be winning in 1 or 2 moves. That's not the intention. What he wants to do is make Magnus uncomfortable, make him think about his responses twice, sort of start doubting himself, and that's where the micro mistakes start to slip in. They said it in the pre-game interviews where I believe it was Alireza who said, if you're playing Magnus, you are still going to get chances, but if you don't take them, you're going to pay for it. Well, in game number 1, it was Alireza who gave Magnus the chance, pounced on in less than a second, like you mentioned, Tanya. So if we see the reciprocal, we are going to get to see how quickly Alireza responds in kind.
In the meantime, still 1 pawn up for Alireza after that last trade. He's 1.5 minutes down, though, almost, and black has a threat over the next couple of turns of the knight landing in the center. That's going to scare Firouzja somewhat. It's going to slow him down. He might have to take preventative measures or trade off that knight. Either way, Magnus looking very relaxed. You do get the kind of impression here that it is home preparation from Magnus Carlsen. He's only spent a minute. This is a move 11 now. And psychologically, that's difficult if you know you've walked into something your opponent has studied before.
Especially when you're the one who wanted to spring in that early surprise and had a different preparation in mind. You know, again, a very smart decision of that black bishop moving to d7 on move 6 by Magnus Carlsen in this game. Now, Alireza has that extra pawn, but it's the lack of development in his pieces. The king's still in the center. For Magnus, the initiative is there. You know, it's ahead in development, the knight jumping to d4. Once you castle, the f-pawn can move up the board, kicking out the knight from the center. Easier to play short turn for Magnus Carlsen. Alireza, he still needs to consolidate his position.
I think your points are absolutely spot on here. It's the psychological impact and, if you like, the psychological win of going into your opponent's plan and then throwing him off his game. I mean, 9 minutes, play 6.5 in a game where Firouzja is white and wants to win straight away. Like, to what extent is this going to really damage his preparation for any future surprise weapons he has against Magnus? If this is the response, wow.
Exactly. There are only so many weaknesses in an opponent's opening arsenal in their repertoire. You have to try and target them, but if you walk into something they've studied, that really is a bit of a blow. That being said, the clock situation, we've seen it so many times before. Alireza Firouzja down on time. Even at the 1 minute mark, though, he's a beast. He plays arguably better than anyone if it gets down to a time scramble. At any moment in this match, you've got to favor the younger player here. So he will be trying to keep his time advantage, Magnus Carlsen.
He does need to drag Magnus down to 1 minute as well to push home that advantage, though. If he's got 1 minute and Magnus has 5, not sure how good that's going to be.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, to make these greats think. But he has forced Magnus to pause for the first real time with this last pawn push.
The strategy for Alireza in this match would be surprising if it is to win out of the opening. He's playing against Magnus. How do you even prepare against a guy like that who plays everything under the sun? The aim would be to just get a position, a playable position, which has got those messy tendencies, that little chaos on the board, the complications where he forces Magnus exactly to come where you are. Under 1 minute on the clock,
Yep.
where Alireza, I think he believes he's perhaps even faster than Magnus if that was to appear with all the... maybe not all, but as many pieces on the board as possible and as much chaos as possible. That's when the match gets truly even.
That's going to be the goal, right? If we see both players get down to a situation where they say have less than 90 seconds on the clock each, and it's a relatively equal position dynamically, but lots of play, Alireza becomes so dangerous. But if in the process of forcing the time down, Magnus is already in a better position, then the plans become easier, it's easier to convert. Even if you're slightly slower, the path to victory is clear. And that's what Alireza needs to stop. The path to victory should never be clear for Magnus, because once he sees it, he's like a homing missile. There's no stopping him.
Exactly. That's why he's so good in the end games. He knows exactly what to aim for, Magnus Carlsen. In the meantime, this position is fascinating. Give back an extra pawn to Black, make it level material, and Magnus has the advantage. Black has the bishop pair. Black's central pawns look glorious. But he does have something to suffer for Alireza, having his extra pawn, and it's just a question of whether he can make it count. The white king in the corner not looking extremely comfortable here. Black's light squared bishop staring at it. Magnus is smiling on the camera in the meantime. Fascinating stuff. He must love his position, but the material imbalance must give Alireza some hope here, Tanya.
I think he's thinking about his bow and arrow right now.
Already?
He's loading up.
Early days, but you know, he got that first shot in.
He did.
And that's something. Or will, Alireza be flying high, fast and precise? Fast, he's not currently. Behind on the clock by about a minute. Magnus, meanwhile, lines up the queen on the G line. Alireza brings his queen closer to the bishop, perhaps trying to neutralize that bishop pair that Magnus has in compensation for the extra pawn. Bishop c5 was the idea, was the threat. We might see it being played out, even though Magnus can now decline the trade after moving the rook away.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Alireza wants. Since he is a pawn up, he wants simplifications, whether it's bishops off the board, rooks off the board, maybe even queens off the board. What Magnus wants is some kind of attack against the white king. Magnus will avoid trades at all costs if he can. And there we see, as Tanya predicted, the bishop trade offered. Dark squared bishops coming off the board would be disastrous for Magnus. It would reduce some of his attacking potential. He's going to dodge that, surely.
You can't afford to trade it. Allow the queen in. Beautiful square for that queen. You can't give up your bishop pair. It is the big initiative in the position that Magnus has. But where do you move it to? And he does step away. He answers the question. Bishop to f6, always eyeing that e4 break, which would further open up the diagonals for his two bishops.
White has the potential for a d4 break, but I'm so scared every time I look at this, because I think if White has a strong way to respond with e4, I'm worried that the position could blow open in a way that maybe the white pieces don't necessarily want. We could be seeing this played out on the board.
Yeah, things are about to heat up right now. It felt like both sides were just maneuvering. To my eyes, it actually looked like Firouzja was maneuvering slightly better than Magnus here. It felt like Magnus, the black rook, the black queen, not quite coordinating with the rest of their army. So Firouzja deciding to strike. Again, trades here help white. Magnus exchanging this pawn, he will not be happy about that if that comes to pass. But if you don't take it, that white pawn might just continue advancing.
Tension on the board.
We do advance, okay. This is worrying.
Will Firouzja do the same? He does. He kicks away Black's light squared bishop. from its nice post. Magnus pausing. He could take the white knight. We could start seeing a tactical sequence akin to what we saw earlier in game 1, where a bunch of trades happened in breakneck speed. But no, Magnus prefers to retreat. He's going for the white king, while Alireza just wants to consolidate his extra pawn.
But this gives the time to Alireza to retreat his own bishop, again trying to target the trade that he really wants of the dark squared bishop. With the move bishop d4, it could be the moment to use that to blunt out that bishop, take away any possibility of bishop takes knight as well. Lots of options for Alireza, but he needs to keep one eye on the clock, or at least half an eye on the clock.
1 minute difference isn't so dramatic right now, but if we keep saying that every game Firouzja is behind on time, then it might add up by the end of the day. It was the case earlier when he blundered. He was slightly behind on the clock, and he won't want that to repeat as he does retreat his bishop.
Exactly. Spot on, Tanya. We have the d4 square occupied now by the white bishop. Again, trying to force the exchange of the dark squared bishops here. I suppose there is the potential for black to take on f3 first, if we want to spice things up a little bit. I'm not 100% sure who that's better for, though, because even though the bishops are on the board, you swap one pair off and you've got the g-file, and you know what? Black's pieces are pointing menacingly towards white's king, but at the same time, if the g-pawn disappears, a rook can swing across to g1, and it becomes a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, let's show that variation. Let's try and get inside Magnus Carlsen's mind on the analysis board here that we've got up. E takes f3 is the critical move. White here has to recapture. You cannot trade bishops, no time yet. But bishop takes bishop here would have allowed an in-between move, a check on the white king. Now black will trade off, regain the bishop at the very end, level material, and the white king a bit open. Black's bishop probably better than the white knight with pawns on both flanks. At the very end here, though, this is happening. After g takes f3, the white rook sliding across to g1 is white's big idea. Black, in the meantime, is trading off pieces. Let's go back to the game because they're playing exactly what we predicted. The black bishop trying to get active, but in the meantime, white's rook opened up on the g-file. Who is this going to favor? Eval bar says white, but clock says black. Not sure I like this for Magnus, I've got to admit. I think Firouzja's done fantastically well in order to establish a bit of control here in the center.
And I think that central square that you're alluding to, once the knight jumps to that point, the rook lining up on g1, suddenly the bishop pair gone, the knight getting stronger, 4 versus 2 on that left flank. C-pawn starts marching up the board once the knight is out of the way. Also, let's point out, Magnus's last move has a threat. Queen takes pawn in the air, so knight e4, he's inviting him to place it in that beautiful spot, also countering the threat.
I'm guessing that's also part of the reason why the black pawn protects the e3 square if black wanted to infiltrate with a rook. Not sure there's enough time to do that, though, because of the c2 pawn being potentially weak, and also because if the knight jumps into e4, there's a real risk that you end up with a rook on the wrong side of the board without support.
But you know, Alireza, he's not playing the most natural move quickly. There's something about knight e4 because it's screaming to be played. You know, it's the hand move, or in this case, the mouse move, that you really want to rush into playing. But he doesn't like something about it, David.
Yeah, I don't really see why not. Maybe it's the fact that the black bishop has the ability to challenge the light squares. Either way, Alireza, he's tanked for too long on this move. The difference on the clock is telling. They say a pawn is worth a minute, and now he's currently almost 2 minutes down. Magnus is going to be gaining in confidence the longer this position doesn't see a move. Alireza really needs to speed up. It feels like this final so far, there we go. The most natural move just took too long. And okay, Magnus instantly ready with his response.
And that's the problem. You take that long, your opponent knows exactly what he's going to play to the first move that comes to everyone's mind here.
It also signals to Magnus, Alireza has been in the tank. He's thinking about an alternative. While your opponent's time is ticking down, you get to have a think yourself about what other moves he was thinking about, which means later on in the game, you're prepared for those ideas, and you've used your opponent's time to come to that realization.
Exactly. The best players, the most practical players in the world, they have all these little tricks to save a few seconds here and there. Magnus, look how zoned in, how focused he is, despite the fact it's not his move. 2.5 minute time difference now. You need to either move that knight or defend it. It's that simple.
I'd be staring at the RGB on the keyboard. That would be too distracting for me. I don't think I could handle it. More pieces piling on the knight on e4 now. And look at the time difference. 4 minutes plays a minute 20. This is becoming critical for Alireza.
And he's trying to desperately calculate here with this remaining minute what will happen if Black next move takes this knight. You can take with the bishop, maybe even with the rook, and tactics will start to land on this board. The white king in the corner is very, very vulnerable. Endgames might be imminent, but Firouzja just doesn't have time to work them out. He's spending way too long. 1 minute versus 4 now.
He's thinking for far too long in this game. I mean, this is just unbelievable, right? Because we're on move 27 and the biggest decisions lie ahead right now. Magnus Carlsen, he might be down upon, but he's not going to make your life easy. Now there are tactics. This is what you need to think. And the board goes red, the clock goes red for Alireza.
Move. Come on, you have to move. Push your pawn to d6, do whatever. Move a rook. You are fine.
35 seconds. He's frozen.
Alireza Firouzja freezing there, making a rook move. And look at this counter-strike by Magnus Carlsen, taking the white knight off the board, double exclamation mark. He's counter-attacking against the white queen. Look at what's about to happen. All the rooks coming off. White's 2 rooks are forked there. One of them had to give their life up. Magnus has equalized this endgame. It's level, but not on the clock.
And Magnus is now going to play to flag Alireza Firouzja. His rook, the more active one. Magnus about to pick up the d5 center pawn. He's just thinking, does he throw in the check? He decides not to. And that is Magnus Carlsen thinking to himself, he knows this is a draw. Is he going to play for dirty flagging with 26 seconds for his opponent?
Have to be ruthless here if you're Magnus Carlsen. Do not let your opponent off the hook. Firouzja, if the shoe was on the other foot, he would be playing for time right now.
3.5 minutes versus 26 seconds. At this point, it's not dirty, it's expected.
He plays on. He 100% plays on. He's going to play this on even with an hour on the clock. It's an endgame. You know, he sees the imbalances, and look at that. He thought he'll force Alireza into a think about this, and Alireza makes a wrong decision. This is what happens when you have no time on the clock against the world number 1.
Exactly, it's easy for Black to create a pass pawn on the right flank on the king side, 3 versus 2. Very difficult actually for White's 3 to mobilize because Black's 2 doubled B pawns hold the fort. The White 3 cannot bypass them. The Black king is coming. It was actually better there for the Black B pawn to push even further to B4. That's a very natural move though from Magnus, and Alireza simply physically does not have enough time to finish this game. Under 20 seconds now. Some big decisions still ahead. Magnus, a bit of a shake of the head. Firouzja there, echoing that. Same for him. He knows he's going to get flagged.
One of Firouzja's biggest strength is just the number of moves, the sheer number of moves he can get in under 20 seconds. But this position, where every move needs to be calculated, every mistake can be a losing move, that is hard. 17 seconds, David, Magnus gets this done.
You would say that, but Firouzja, this last move is fantastic. The white king is holding the black king. It's keeping it honest. If the black king ever gives way, the white king steps forward. Firouzja with 16 seconds. It's actually quite an easy draw now. But does he have time? That's the big question. Magnus has really slowed down.
This would be god-level hold by Alireza Firouzja if he manages to save this king-pawn ending with only 15 seconds against Magnus.
Magnus smiling because he knows it's a dead draw. There's no way through for the black king into the white half of the board. The black king can try all at once, but there's no path forward, and the kings are already starting to dance.
It's a fortress and a repetition.
Draw by repetition. 2 minutes and 2 seconds, plays 14 seconds, but we were reduced to a position where all Alireza Firouzja had to do was move the kings backwards and forwards. An attempt was made to see if a mistake could be forced under time pressure, but Alireza hold. Magnus Carlsen 1.5, Alireza Firouzja 1/2.